Your brain has been sending you signals. Here are 6 you should never ignore. Today we're going to talk about the 6 early warning signs of, give me a second. The 6 early warning signs of dementia. And yes, I did that on purpose, because one of the things that makes dementia so genuinely frightening and so easy to miss is that in the early stages, the signs can look exactly like something we all do every day. Forgetting a word, getting turned around somewhere familiar, walking into a room and having absolutely no idea why you went there. We laugh it off, we call it a senior moment, we blame stress or bad sleep or the fact that we've been watching too much television. But sometimes, and this is the part worth paying attention to, it's not that. And the difference between those two things is something you should know how to spot, not to alarm you, to inform you. Because the earlier you know, the more options you have. Let's get into it. This is Bright Future Health, where we make health science understandable and, when the topic allows, slightly less terrifying. Subscribe if you're new. New content every week. Disclaimer before anything. This video is educational. It is not a diagnostic tool. If you or someone you love is showing concerning symptoms, please see a naturopathic doctor. Early evaluation is one of the most powerful tools available. We'll talk about why. And if you watch this whole video and conclude that you definitely have dementia, don't. Almost everyone who watches a video about dementia symptoms is convinced they have it. This is normal. This does not mean you have dementia. It means you're paying attention, which is genuinely good. Now, a quick story. Years ago, there was a patient, sharp, articulate, well-read, who came in complaining that she kept losing her train of thought mid-sentence. She'd be talking, know exactly what she wanted to say, and then the word just wasn't there. She called it brain fog. Her family called it getting older. She called it deeply frustrating and not normal for her. She was right. It wasn't normal for her. And the 6 signs we're covering today are exactly the kind of thing she was experiencing. Subtle, easy to dismiss, meaningful if you know what you're looking at. Let's go through all 6, and I promise to keep it as unterrifying as possible. Sign number 1, short-term memory loss. The one everybody knows, but not like this. Short-term memory loss. And before you close the tab because you think you already know this one, stay with me. Because most people misunderstand what this actually looks like in the early stages. There's a crucial distinction that doctors draw between normal forgetting and concerning forgetting. Normal forgetting is when you can't remember the name of the actor in the movie you saw last week. Concerning forgetting is when you can't remember that you went to a movie last week. Normal forgetting is when you walk into a room and forget why. Concerning forgetting is when you walk into a room, forget why, and then also forget that you walked into a room. The hippocampus, the region of the brain most responsible for forming new short-term memories, is almost always the first area affected in Alzheimer's disease. And here's the detail most people miss. The hippocampus is extremely sensitive to nutritional deficiencies. Vitamin B1, thiamine, is essential for hippocampus energy metabolism. When B1 is low, the hippocampus underperforms. Chronically elevated blood sugar and insulin resistance have also been shown to shrink the hippocampus over time. Some researchers now call Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes because of how closely insulin dysfunction is linked to brain degeneration. What this means for you. Recent memory is the first to go. Long-term memory stays intact much longer. If someone remembers their wedding day in vivid detail but can't recall what they had for breakfast, that pattern is worth paying attention to. And if you want to protect your hippocampus, lower your sugar intake, protect your B vitamin status, and keep insulin levels in check. Sign number 2, getting lost in familiar places. When the GPS in your head stops working. This one is sneaky because it starts small and gets gradually bigger in a way that's easy to rationalize until it isn't. Getting lost in familiar places, not unfamiliar places. Anyone can get turned around somewhere new. I'm talking about the neighborhood you've lived in for 20 years, the route to the grocery store you've driven 100 times, the floor plan of your own house at night. The brain has a dedicated navigation system. The entorhinal cortex and the hippocampus work together to build and maintain spatial maps of familiar environments. In Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, this system degrades early. The internal GPS starts losing its signal. Research has shown that navigational difficulties can actually appear years before other cognitive symptoms become obvious, making it one of the earlier detectable warning signs. Now, this is different from turning left when you meant to turn right because you were thinking about something else. That's distraction. The concerning version is when familiar spatial information is genuinely gone, when a person can't orient themselves in an environment they know well, or when they become confused or anxious in places that should feel automatic. What this means for you: if someone in your life has started expressing confusion about routes, locations, or directions that should be completely second nature, that's worth flagging. And if it's happening to you, see a naturopathic doctor sooner rather than later. Early navigation changes are one of the things that imaging and testing can actually detect and evaluate. Sign number 3, word finding difficulties. When the right word just isn't there. Having trouble finding words. And this is the one that tends to embarrass people the most, which is part of why it gets overlooked. Everyone occasionally loses a word. You're reaching for a name, it's right on the tip of your tongue, and then 30 seconds later, it comes to you in the shower. That's normal. That's just how memory retrieval works. It's not always instant, especially under pressure or when you're tired. The concerning version is persistent. It's when the word retrieval problem happens frequently, with common everyday words, not just names. When someone describes objects rather than naming them, that thing you use to, for the kitchen, the hot thing, instead of just saying the stove. When conversations trail off because the word that was supposed to be next simply isn't there. When this starts happening regularly with words the person has used confidently for decades, this is called anomia, difficulty retrieving words, and it's closely linked to changes in the left temporal lobe, the area of the brain that stores semantic memory, which is our memory for words, facts, and meanings. Nutritionally, omega-3 fatty acids, DHA specifically, are essential structural components of the neurons in this region. B12 deficiency, which affects the myelin sheath that insulates nerve fibers, can also produce word-finding difficulties that look remarkably like early dementia, but are actually reversible if caught in time. What this means for you: get B12 tested if word-finding issues are becoming frequent. Increase fatty fish, egg yolks, and red meat. And if the difficulties are progressive and can't be explained by stress or sleep deprivation, have a neurological evaluation. Some of what looks like early dementia is actually a nutritional deficiency that's completely treatable. Quick pause, drop a comment below and tell me, is there a sign from today's list that you've noticed in yourself or someone you love? You don't have to share details. I will be reading every comment, and knowing what resonates helps me make better content. Okay, 3 more signs. Sign number 4, loss of smell, the warning sign. Nobody talks about. This is the one that surprises people most. A declining sense of smell. Not losing your sense of smell after a cold or a sinus infection. A gradual, progressive dulling of the ability to detect odors, food going bad, someone's perfume, coffee brewing, that gets worse over time without an obvious respiratory cause. The olfactory bulb, the brain structure that processes smell, is one of the first regions affected in both Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. It's so reliably affected early that researchers have actually studied olfactory testing as a potential screening tool for neurodegenerative disease. A 2024 study from the National Institute on Aging found that lower scores on smell tests were directly associated with a higher probability of developing mild cognitive impairment linked to Alzheimer's. The olfactory bulb also has a direct anatomical connection to the hippocampus, the memory center, which is part of why smell can trigger such vivid memories. When one starts to go, the other is often not far behind. What this means for you? A gradual loss of smell, especially in someone in their 60s or 70s, is worth mentioning to your doctor. It won't cause alarm on its own, but combined with other signs, it completes a picture. And for those with COVID-related smell loss that hasn't fully returned, get it checked. Persistent olfactory damage after COVID has its own neurological implications that deserve proper evaluation. Sign number 5, mood and personality changes, when someone isn't quite themselves. This one is often the hardest to spot because it's easy to attribute it to 100 other things. Personality and mood changes. Not a bad day, not a rough patch. A sustained, noticeable shift in who someone is. A person who was always warm and social becoming withdrawn and uninterested in people they love. A person who was always patient becoming unusually irritable or suspicious. A person who was always cautious making surprisingly impulsive financial decisions. A person who was always cheerful experiencing persistent apathy, not sadness exactly, just a kind of flatness, a loss of initiative, a loss of interest in things that used to light them up. A 2023 study in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that apathy, not depression, specifically apathy, was a significant predictor of progression from mild cognitive impairment to Alzheimer's disease. The brain changes driving dementia affect the frontal lobe, the region that governs personality, emotional regulation, and social behavior, often before the memory problems become obvious. So sometimes what looks like he's just getting grumpy in his old age, or she doesn't care about things the way she used to, is actually the frontal lobe losing ground. What this means for you, personality doesn't change dramatically without reason. If someone you know well has shifted in a way that feels unlike them and can't be explained by life circumstances, that's information. Gently, lovingly, mention it to their doctor. It's one of the signs that the people closest to someone are often the first to notice and the last to say anything. Sign number 6, trouble with familiar tasks. When the usual becomes confusing. When one has difficulty completing tasks that used to be automatic. Not new tasks. Not complicated tasks that would challenge anyone. Familiar tasks. The recipe someone has made every Thanksgiving for 30 years. The route to the farmer's market they've driven every month. The rules of the card game they've played with friends since forever. Suddenly, with something they know completely, there's confusion. They lose their place. They start over multiple times. They get frustrated in a way that's unfamiliar and disproportionate to the difficulty of the task. This is because procedural and semantic memory, the kind that stores how to do things, and the knowledge we rely on for familiar tasks, requires ongoing neural connectivity that dementia progressively disrupts. In the early stages, new learning is the first to suffer. But as degeneration progresses, even well-established knowledge and skills start to require more effort and begin to slip. And here's the piece that connects everything we've covered today. The brain is extraordinarily dependent on fuel, not just glucose. In fact, the brain's relationship with glucose becomes impaired in dementia, which is part of why ketones, the brain's alternative fuel produced from fat, are showing such promise in cognitive research. Intermittent fasting, a ketogenic diet, fatty fish, and adequate B vitamins all support the metabolic environment in which the brain functions best. They don't guarantee anything, but they create conditions that are measurably more favorable to brain health than the standard modern diet does. What this means for you? When familiar tasks become an effort in a new way, when someone needs help with something they've always done independently, that's a sign worth acting on. See a doctor. Get a cognitive evaluation. Know what you're dealing with so you can make informed decisions about next steps. Opinion time, and I'm going to be direct, with humor and then sincere. In my opinion, the way most people treat their brains is one of the great ironies of modern life. We are the only species on Earth with the cognitive capacity to understand our own. Neurology, to study our own brain diseases, to publish research on how to protect this 3-pound structure that contains every thought, memory, skill, and personality trait we possess. And then go home and feed it the nutritional equivalent of nothing. Wash it down with sweetened beverages. Keep it in a chronically high insulin metabolic state and wonder why it starts to underperform. The brain is the most expensive piece of equipment you will ever own, and most people are running it on the cheapest possible fuel. That is the joke. And also not a joke at all. The good news, and I want to end this section on genuine good news, is that the brain is more responsive to lifestyle intervention than most people believe. The hippocampus can actually grow new neurons in response to the right conditions. Ketones can fuel a brain that has lost the ability to efficiently use glucose. vitamin B1 and B12, when replaced in a deficient person, can reverse symptoms that look exactly like early dementia. Insulin resistance can be improved with diet and fasting, reducing the type 3 diabetes burden on the brain. Omega-3s can slow cognitive decline in people who are already showing signs of impairment. None of this is a cure, but not a cure is not the same as nothing you can do. There is plenty you can do, and the earlier you start doing it, the more brain you get to keep. All right, let's bring this home. While I still remember where we started, here's your challenge. Share this video with one person in your life who needs to see it. Someone whose memory changes you've privately noticed. Someone whose personality has quietly shifted. Someone who would benefit from this information but would never look it up themselves. This sharing might be genuinely important for them. Subscribe if you haven't already. New content every week at Bright Future Health. Take care of your brain. It's the only one you have, and it's been quietly doing everything for you since day one. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go find my, you know what? I'll figure it out.